Welcome to Education Now. I'm your host, David Jefferson Jr. And as always, we're glad to have you with us, and we're glad that you've joined. We're joined with Lamont Harris Jr. He is the District Education Technology Ambassador for the city of Plainfield, New Jersey, a very important role in these dire times. Lamont, if you can, give us a bit of an understanding into how did you find your way to education?
Well, I think it's just, I answered an inner calling. Although I went to Temple University to study business, I always had a passion for helping others. Even in high school, I would tutor student athletes that I actually played football, ran track with. I tutored at my middle school students and elementary students during weekends. And following my graduation from Temple, I had a short career in business sales, but something was missing. And that inner calling just kept knocking. And I actually had the opportunity to work at as a teen workforce development in the city of Newark for a rec center, where I would help students prep for summer jobs. I would teach them on business etiquette, help them with scheduling, things of that nature that will better prepare them to enter the workforce as teens and into their adult life. And while working there, the school was actually across the street from an elementary school. And the principal saw that I had a real strong rapport with the children. And he asked if I would be interested in coming to be a teacher over at the school. And I think that was like my aha moment in life. Like, I really love what I'm doing over here as opposed to, business sales. So I took full advantage, and I left the business world, and I took a leap of faith, and I entered the education realm. And since then, I never really looked back. As far as my way into the role as a technology ambassador for the district, many of the things that I learned in business, and many of the things that I applied to my life in business, as far as the technology and preparation, I just carried over into the classroom. Marketing, instead of selling products, now I'm selling a service. I'm selling education. So if I can sell the services, if I can sell students on wanting to be involved in their education, I can do the same thing in the classroom. So from there, I moved into the education realm, the classroom, and I always push the need to teach students technology, to use different programs, Google, Microsoft Office, and various tools to not replace education, but to strengthen their learning while developing as young students. And even before COVID, the district in Plainfield started to see the need for these things. So they reached out to myself and asked would I be willing to help show my ways to other teachers so they can have a stronger practice of instructional technologies in their classroom. And fortunately enough, Plainfield actually received monies to allow each student in the classroom to have a one-to-one device, meaning that each child had their own personal device from the beginning of the day to the end of the day in school. So with that being said, and seeing districts around the country starting to replace textbooks, we didn't want to fall behind, but we also didn't just want to hand out we didn't want to hand out iPads or Chromebooks without really putting them to good use to really mature the student as far as their growth in the academic realm, but actually use these technology tools to better themselves. So I was just able.
Let me just say this. The role, and I have to applaud your district and your current superintendent. At the time, I've had the pleasure of meeting her and the work that she's doing coming out of Maryland into New Jersey. I mean, I have to applaud the leadership that is saying we need someone who has this title of education technology and incorporating that instruction. And the work you're doing and the work that you have been doing is ever so important now. What unique insights can you say educators can offer students and parents right now as it relates to understanding the role of technology in education?
First and foremost, we have to understand that technology will never be able to replace that personal connect, that personal connect that a teacher can.
Hmm.
However, a presentation is more attractive with PowerPoint or Glocks or some of these other educational tools out here. We want to use technology as a tool. Thousands of years ago, there were no wheels, and traveling was harder. Now we have wheels. We make things a little easier. We make things more efficient with the use of technology. So that's the key point, that technology can't replace what our current practices, but it can make it more efficient if it's used in the proper way. So that's what we've been doing. We've been researching different programs, different companies, and seeing who can provide the best service for our student population, and how can we, bring our teachers up to speed in using these technologies in the correct way to enhance their students' performance.
Let me ask you this question before we move on with the interview. How are you doing during this COVID period? I mean, we're always focused on data and results, but one of the main components of this show is really checking in, doing a wellness check with the educator, and seeing how they are doing and how their family is doing. How are you doing?
Uh, it's a blessing to be healthy. So I don't take that lightly. So
Hmm.
it has been trying to for the students, and to keep that connection with them. Many a times throughout the school year, you're spending more time with your students than you are your own families, and vice versa. So you're losing a big part of your emotional surroundings,
Mm.
and you can't go without thinking, especially being in the urban district such as Plainfield. How are my students doing? That's on my mind almost constantly. Did they eat today? Are they safe at home? So those are the type of things that I worry more about. As far as myself, my family, we're well taken care of. So there's no stress there. But I always think about, what are my students doing? And I mean, I'm so used to being there for them, both physically in the classroom, and that emotional, that physical disconnect. It strains you as emotionally, to be honest.
Once again, we're with Lamont Harris Jr. He is currently the District Education Technology Ambassador for City of Plainfield, New Jersey, and we're having a great dialogue here as it relates to technology. Um, and I really believe that, he's leading the way with a role that is going to more than likely find its way into a lot of our school districts. You were speaking about social emotional learning. It's safe to say, knowing your background as a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, being a part of the Omicron Chi chapter in Plainfield, knowing the work that you've done in the community, knowing how present you are in giving back in the community, um, that community is important to you. And you touched on a point here, saying that schools are oftentimes, schools are community hubs. Um, how are educators, and how can educators with technology reach out to ensure that the social emotional learning aspect is still taking place during this time? What are your thoughts on that, Lamont?
Well, personally, we do wellness checks with our students. Yes, the goal is to keep academic performance high, and keep the rigor while we are outside the classroom. But we're humans first. And I have a philosophy. You can't teach a child that doesn't like you. You can't really teach a child who is not, connected to you. So although we're not there physically, how was your day? How's everything at home? What can I do to help? Um, and kids really respond to that, knowing that you really care about them. And we also give them time to socialize. They're missing their friends. They're missing their environment. So it's not all about just, add this, read that. You want to make sure that even though we're not physically connecting, we're still emotionally connected. So we embed that into our lessons, into the projects that we have. We still do group projects, but it depends on the type of technology tools that we're implementing to make sure that we can carry these, we call those the hidden curriculum. We carry these hidden curricular things over into the technological field while we're away from the classroom to make sure that they're developing socially and emotionally as well as academically.
Very good, very good. We're with Lamont Harris. This is a gentleman who holds a undergraduate degree from Temple University. He holds a master's from Kane University, and he is currently engaged in working on his educational doctorate. But it is also important to note that he was a part of the post-bachelor teacher of students with disabilities program, as well as the postmaster learning disabilities teaching consultant program. To say the least, Lamont Harris is credentialed and qualified to do the work that he is doing in the city of Plainfield. Lamont, doing a little bit of research into your background and peeling back some of the layers, I know about your commitment to education, but I was delighted to find out more about your group that you founded called My Circle. Can you tell us a little bit more about My Circle?
Well, My Circle, which stands for Men and Youth Cultivating Integrity, Restoring Community Life and Education, was always something that I spoke of with friends, or actually did on a lesser scale, just seeing a youth in trouble and wanting to do something about it. And the youth in Plainfield were dying at an unacceptable rate, and that unacceptable rate for me is anyone passing away over acts of violence. In fact, when I was 14-year old, one of my good friends was killed over a bicycle. Someone took his bike. He went to go get his bike back. The person stabbed him, and he died over a bicycle. And that's always haunted me. It's always haunted me. So it was time to stop talking and to start doing. So I just woke up one day. I called up several people who shared the same compassion, and I said, today's the day that we're going to do something. So we begin the process of planning what we would do, our mission, our paperwork, and we just put feet to pavement, and we started developing programs within the community where we would do outreach with youth. We will hold seminars, sometimes just a change of environment, take them on trips, camping, things that they're not typically exposed of, and let them know that there's more to life than what you're doing right now, what is the main focus. So not only do we want to show these kids these things, but we also want to give them the knowledge and the encouragement to empower themselves to be active agents to change, even as youngsters. I remember one of our 8-year-olds wrote an essay about how he's tired of seeing trash everywhere. So we said, you know what, you have a great idea, and we fully supported his ideal of doing a community cleanup project. So we just wanted to keep things like that growing in our community. These students are our future, and Frederick Douglass says it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. So we want to just strengthen these children to become strong, so when they do take over their communities, they can keep the cycle going, and we can ultimately see change, generational change in the long run.
Lamont Harris, Educational Technology Ambassador, City of Plainfield. We're having a great conversation with him today as our guest on Education Now. Lamont, let's talk a little bit about your work in your organization, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. I'm aware that, creating content that is exciting, innovating is a challenge, to say the least, as it relates to young people. You are the founder of a wonderful program called the Booker Black History Bowl. This is a citywide Black history competition Give us a little bit of insight into your creation of this wonderful competition, and why was it so important to create something um, in this regard?
Um, I'm just blessed to be a part of such an amazing fraternity, to be to be around such intelligent, insightful men that just encourage me to be better. And Charles Booker is one of those Omega men who has done so. In fact, in the 1950s, he was the lead appellant in the Supreme Court case, which actually desegregated the schools, not only in Plainfield, but it was a catalyst to desegregate schools across New Jersey.
Mm.
And as I sat and I had the opportunity to interview him about that process, and I said, I grew up in Plainfield. I never knew that, and it's sad because that's something I should have known. And I started to think, how many other students or people don't know these things, or just don't know much about our rich history in general. So upon leaving that interview, I just sat up that whole night and started to ask myself questions and write down facts and just pull my own information. I said, you know what, I need to share this.
Mm.
So I just kept writing questions, and the next thing I know, I had 100 facts and 100 questions, and I started to just share it within my own classroom. And I said, no, I need to share this more. So I shared it with my own school. And I said, I know that I need to share this more. So I approached the men in my chapter of Omicron Chi, and they said, they just 100% support whatever your vision is. We will make it happen. And I think within 2 months, we had 80% of the elementary schools in Plainfield ready and willing to participate in a citywide Black History Bowl from the questions and content I developed. And we've been running this program since, and it continues to grow every year. It attracts more districts. We're actually looking at New Brunswick possibly joining us in the forthcoming year. We did have to skip this year because of COVID, but that's only going to make us work harder to present an even better program in 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're having a great conversation with Lamont Harris, the Educational Technology Ambassador. And even in saying that title, it's somewhat limiting to the type of gentleman that we're dealing with today on this call. A man who has substance and layers, and a man who's credentialed, and he's a community gentleman as well, infusing that with technology. I applaud you, Lamont. I know that you've been on this road of education for some time now, since coming into Plainfield in 2011. But you've also, started out working in some of the toughest cities and districts, I'd say. You started out in Newark, New Jersey, and you segue into Plainfield. These are areas that need the greatest of our minds. So let's talk about success here. Let's talk a little bit about success. Can you tell me a success story about working in the school environment and working to achieve your goals during the pandemic at this time?
Yeah, I don't measure my success by the big ones, but those small successes that add up. When you get an email from a parent who says, I'm so happy that my child is still able to connect, and they're looking forward to waking up each day and joining your Google Meets to do the lesson. When you get Instagram messages from past students saying, Mr. Harris, remember when you taught me how to do this? Now I got accepted into the performing arts classroom because I did well on my test, and you encouraged me. One of the biggest success stories I had actually had nothing to do with the classroom at all. Being a special needs teacher, I have a specific population that is typically disadvantaged. And there was one student who was almost ostracized for a while by his other students, but he loved basketball. And I noticed during recess, he wanted to play basketball, but nobody would ever pass him the ball because he wore hearing aids. Mm-hmm. So I love basketball too. So I loosened up my tie, went out there for recess with them, and I played with him. And every time I got the ball, everybody wants the ball from me, but I made sure I passed it to him.
Mm.
And little did, he had a jumper. He passed it off, swish, and
He had a jumper? Did he really?
yeah, he was lighting them up, and nobody knew that he could play like that because they would never pass him the ball.
Wow.
So it encouraged him to
Wow.
try out for the elementary school team.
Mhm.
And then I'm about to get a little choked up. I'm on Instagram, and I see a video of an athletic trainer, and I'm looking in the background. There's my student. He's with one of the elite basketball trainers in the Plainfield City, and he's just performing so well on the court. And I just think about that little bit, that little small success he had on the playground was the confident catalyst that boosted his career. Now he's going to be starting on high school team, on varsity team someday, just because I was able to give him that little boost of confidence, and just to show others around him that it's not about what you see on the inside, but on the outside. But everyone has layers to themselves, and you just got to give people a chance and try and welcome the differences of others.
Once again, we're with Lamont Harris, Educational Technology Ambassador, and I would say overall, just leader in our educational realm at this time. Lamont, I want to ask you, and I oftentimes do this with my guests. What would you say are some of your needs right now? And I usually do it in the form of if you could have some wishes, or if you could have anything you would want for your students, what would it be?
It's hard to say because being a product of Plainfield, from a very early age, I've learned how to make a lot with a little. But I still feel that there's a need to expose kids to things that doesn't meet their the eye in their regular city. So field trips are a big thing that I feel is lacking in our public education due to funding. Students don't get to go on as many trips as we once did.
I agree with
So
you.
I'm always looking for a way. I probably do fundraising 3 times a week with my students. We were just always looking for a way to fund a new opportunity to go somewhere that we've never been, to experience something that is going to just give us a new outlook on life in a positive way. So those are the things that I believe that we're missing, and that I'm always looking towards and forward to better.
I totally agree with you. And working in my role, as an educator with my education consulting company, we're in a number of school districts throughout the state, and it is a challenge to get young people exposed to new opportunities. There's a lot of, I would say, red tape that rests at the level of the board, and then there's just so much there. So it's encouraging to hear you say that, and we must expose them. Exposure is what leads to learning. Let's talk advice and insight. I know that you're a man who's well-read, well-traveled, and well-dressed, to say the least. But let's look at the next generation, or folks who could learn from you. You've been engaged here in education for over a decades plus here, and if there's a tip of advice or insight that you could give to educators, young educators who are starting out or are coming into the fray right now, what would you share with them, Lamont?
Press on to connect with their inner child, to remember that just as adults have egos and emotions, children carry the same little egos, little emotions, and sometimes big egos and big emotions. So we have to always treat them as humans first. And lastly, to be a bridge builder, to leave something behind for those who follow behind you, and encourage them to be better than what you are. That's what my aim is. I hope that's what I leave for my students, just to show them that if I can do it, you can do it. But not only can you do it, you can do it better. So I will encourage just not even newly entered educators, just educators in general, people in general, to just lay foundations for people to come behind you and be better.
This show is titled Education Now, and in about a minute or less, if you could define what education now means to you, what would you say, starting with education now?
Education now is omnipotent. Education now is non-negotiable. Education now is our path to escape our current conditions. Education now is our will to press on through difficult times. Education now is our future. I believe education now is what we need for our communities, especially the urban communities, which I have such a rich for because I am that urban student. Education now is exactly how we are going to change the path for tomorrow's generations.
Lamont Harris, I want to thank you for joining us, and we're going to keep track of the great work that you're doing. We certainly appreciate you and all that you're doing. We want you to keep doing what you're doing. And to my audience, we want to thank you for joining us for Education Now. We'll see you next time. And remember, as always, school's in session.
Thank you for having me.